subject of investigation, and it's been reported on by a number of different centers. And it is controversial as to whether or not breast cancer is part of the of Lynch syndrome in terms of increased risk. There are a number of studies that have shown no increased risk in terms of developing breast cancer in Lynch syndrome as compared to the general population. And then, as you've alluded to, there are conflicting studies that do raise this possibility. The current guidelines are for age-appropriate breast screening in line with the population.
That would not include MRI. Correct. And that would be mammogram, not MRI. It's not a high
Correct,
risk.
source, yes, it's specifically, yes.
Yes.
This is more a question or observation. This is for Jenna.
Can you just speak up a bit, please?
Regarding the psychological aspect of Planned Parenthood. How old is the term Lynch syndrome? When did they come up with that term?
Well, the actual term Lynch syndrome is relatively new, but I assume you're referring to HNPCC when that was identified?
I'm leading into that, yes.
Yeah. I actually don't know offhand.
Okay. I was diagnosed with cancer approximately 19 years ago. But it was only about, I'd say about 6 years ago that I actually understood that I had HNPCC. And my knowledge of Lynch is somewhere between 2 and 3 years. But my Planned Parenthood started about 12 years ago. So the question is, how did it affect my Planned Parenthood? Well, it was already, no parent would ever deny regretting having children. But I found the first little graph kind of misleading, because had I known 12 years ago about having Lynch syndrome, it may have changed my direction in life. I don't regret it for a second. But I just think maybe the question, I believe it would make a new interview. I found that one question a little bit flawed because the timelines don't kind of work to make it relevant.
Absolutely, I think that's a really fair observation. And the data that I put up there was just from the questionnaire package, where we asked people, just black and white, where do you rate this on the scale? I guess the only way to follow it up is in talking to people in the interviews that we have done. We did ask them about any regrets and anything in hindsight that they would have done differently. And even given that opportunity, really nobody said that they would change anything. So I think what you're getting at is sort of, if you knew ahead of time what would have changed, and maybe that could have been the case.
I think it may have changed some of the answers, but most people, their children are over 18 at this point. No, you wouldn't turn back the clock.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. It was a very good presentation.
Catherine, you've gone through a lot, and we appreciated your openness for sure. What advice, other than what you've already said, listening to the presentations, do you have for people your age who have Lynch syndrome? And being the only one in your family, have you actually gone back and done in-depth research in your family to ensure yourself that there was no other affected member?
First. We've tried to go back. It's difficult. Some of my grandparents, their records have been hard to find, but definitely my parents have been tested, and my sister as well. And they don't seem to have anything. But we're still looking into going further than that, to my parents' parents and grandparents and whatnot. But I guess the advice to give people who have Lynch syndrome, go for all those screenings. I know I see Dr. Craig every year. He knows me better by the back end for sure. Like I said, early detection is probably the best thing. It saved my life. So I really recommend it. As annoying as all those tests are and everything, just keep up with them, keep a positive attitude, and keep being active and do things that are good for you. anything that I've experienced that I can pass on.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Corner.
This is directed to Catherine. I remember, if I didn't hear wrong, you mentioned about that you're learning Reiki.
Sorry? Say that again.
You are practicing Reiki? Or?
Oh, yes.
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 I'm not particularly familiar with it, but I had one experience with it. My interest is if you were having someone helping you with Reiki or undergoing radiation or chemotherapy and your experience with it, and currently, now that you're a practitioner, has anything been done in terms of that you've gone through some scientific testing regard to the gene? Just if you could, kind of elaborate a bit more.
It's okay. Through what I've learned of Reiki, it's definitely not a replacement for any form of treatment. It's definitely just something to add on. It's a bonus that you should still follow your doctor's orders and whatnot. But if you're open to it, it's an alternative form of healing that most people find very spiritual, and it can help a lot. I have to quote myself here because I wrote down something to say in regards to this. Actually, I didn't bring it with me. Anyways, I'm still going through it. I'm still learning, and it's like I said, it's something very spiritual that you have to find for yourself. And if you're open to it, then it can do a world of good. But it definitely can't change any mutations that you've already had. So it's just something to add to your life and to make you happy and go along with it.
A couple of questions there, and one down here, and one over there.
Probably. Something like that.
We need more screens. What about right here? Right here. Screen that Kara's sitting down, I didn't even see.
I have a question in regards to about some of the cancers that you guys pointed out that really don't seem to have a way to test for them, such as ovarian cancer and prostate cancers. You made it sound like there's really no sort of early diagnostic testing for those kinds of cancers. What would you say about those cancers as far as screenings for some of the cancers that are less risk of developing?
I can talk about ovarian and I'll leave it to Geraldo as comments. So I guess when we say there's no recommendations, is that there's no evidence that we can yet that we prevent cancer deaths or recognize early cancers. That being said, I think that in all high-risk cancer groups, whether it's Lynch syndrome or BRCA1, we don't feel that if someone isn't completed having their family, that we can just say go away for 10 years and come back. That there needs to be a relationship with a physician who understands the syndrome, understanding the possible symptoms, including physical exam and imaging, as long as there was a real discussion of all the limitations. And that sometimes we can do harm by doing screening tests, by picking up things that are not cancer and having to do intervention. And there just has to be a real dialogue about what is available and the limitations. Specifically, I'm speaking specifically for ovarian cancer. And I think it holds true probably for the others that are even much less common. There's really no great screening strategy.
Yeah, to show that screening is effective, as Sarah has alluded to, there's very high hurdles. So part of it is that you can do, you have to be able to find something and then you have to be able to find something and do something about it. And it assumes that it's common, and they're, these are extremely high scientific hurdles. And I think something that's important to understand, even though yes, there are a very wide host of cancers that the rates are increased in Lynch syndrome, individually, most of those cancers are still quite rare within Lynch syndrome. So small bowel cancer, as an example, 95% of patients or individuals with who are mismatch repair mutation carriers will never develop small bowel cancer. So it wouldn't matter how much screening you do, you'll never detect it. So these things are difficult, and the guidelines are what the guidelines are for a reason. What I would say is that, as has been mentioned, I think it's important that individuals be their own advocates. And certainly there's a difference between screening, which is to try to detect a cancer before it's causing any symptoms, or having investigations for things that are wrong. So if something is wrong with you, I don't mean you personally, I mean in a general sense, that people should pay attention to their bodies and seek out their physician.
Hi, Phil Yellow, Lynch syndrome guy. I had colon cancer like 20 years ago, and Dr. Bright was part of the team that got me better. We were both a lot younger then. One comment and two questions. Comment, Catherine, thank you so much. I don't have any questions because you were so open, and I love hearing the stories. I remember these, this room, or this event used to be like 20 people in this room down on the 5th floor, and this thing is really grown, and I thank all the organizers. The question, Dr. Bright, I guess, Catherine's parents may not have had Lynch syndrome. What's up with that? And secondly, I grew up taking up cooking, and but everything's with butter and bacon. So if there's any studies,
So I'll leave the cooking instructions to somebody else. But, in terms of the issue of, how is it possible that your parents don't have it? Well, there are two possibilities. I'll discuss one. We all know what it is. So with all inherited genetic disorders, they had to arise somewhere. So we are not perfect in terms of replicating our genomes, and either there can be an event. It usually occurs very shortly after implantation. So sometimes every cell in the body has it. Sometimes people are a little bit of what we call chimeras. They actually have a bunch of cells in their body that have a different gene or a mutated gene compared to the other ones. But new mutations do arise, and it happens to be in Lynch syndrome. It seems that rate is very low, so we do not see a lot of new mutation carriers in Lynch syndrome, but I'm sure most of the people in the audience, for instance, have heard of familial polyposis, which is another colorectal cancer predisposition syndrome. And in fact, about 15% of patients with familial polyposis, it's a new mutation. It just seems that that gene, for whatever reason, is predisposed to new mutations in an individual just shortly after fertilization.
And the second one? The second one is very real, and it has been shown that a certain percentage of these new mutations are due to illegitimacy. No question about that. Yes?
Thank you for your presentation. It's really great to hear this presentation. It's my first time coming here. My question has to do a little bit more with incidence of this syndrome. I'm having, I guess, some trouble understanding whether this is primarily seen in Western populations versus non-Western populations. And I guess the second part to that question is, if that's the case, is it possible that this genetic mutation has sort of a lifestyle vulnerability aspect to it?
Yeah, good question. Rob?
So there are population prevalence differences. However, Lynch syndrome is seen in extremely diverse populations. So it's actually not a Western. It's not a Western syndrome exclusively at all. We see it in Southeast Asian. Colorectal cancer is specifically a Western cancer, but even that isn't holding true, and the whole world is becoming westernized in terms of how they live, and that probably has a lot to do with sporadic colorectal cancer. But there are some groups with higher rates, but certainly it's seen all around the world in all ethnicities.
Right. But there are certain diseases that have been shown, like inflammatory bowel diseases. Some of the Asian populations, it's not very common in the Asian population, but it's been shown that when they move to, let's say, North America, then the incidence within that Asian population is higher. So there are definitely going to be environmental factors that influence the genetics and whatever causes these diseases. Yes.
Hi, my name is Jerry Smith. I was diagnosed 22 years ago at the age of 34. My question is about tumor marker cells. At that time, they were testing his blood, and I'm not quite sure whether that was because they had identified the tumor itself, and is there any benefit to that test anymore?
So I guess I just need a tiny bit of clarification there. Are we talking about colon cancer?
Yes.
And a blood test for colon cancer?
They were doing tumor markers for 3 cancer cells that were in the blood that they were testing blood for. It used to be covered by OPEC.
Okay, so what you're talking about is CEA. And CEA is something that is used in terms of following people who've been diagnosed and treated for colon cancer, but it's actually not a surveillance or screening test. CEA is of some use in conjunction with other things. It's not a terrific test, but it's of some use in terms of following people who've had colon cancer to try to detect early if they have a recurrence or spread of their colon cancer. And presumably if somebody, but all surveillance in individuals who've had cancer in terms of it coming back generally starts to wind down around 5 years after they've had the cancer, because after that they're essentially cured and it's highly unlikely that that cancer will come back.
And it's, again, just as has been mentioned, it's another tool, a surveillance tool, or not even, well, a screening tool of sorts, that there's a lot of controversy about using CEA, and it's only really good in the situation that Rob has mentioned.
My question is for Dr. Ferguson. Do you have any recommendations for those women who are under the age of 40 who had
hysterectomy, including ovaries and HRT, and taking HRT? Just your thoughts on that?
So whether you've had a hysterectomy and removal of ovaries, and whether they should be on HRT or not?
Yeah, if they're under the age of 40.
Okay.
You talked a bit about it being over, but for those who are under the age of 40.
Okay, so I'll clarify that. I guess what I was saying for risk-reducing surgery. So regardless of the age of your risk-reducing surgery, or if you have surgery, surgery for cancer is a little bit more complicated and is individualized. But if you had, someone in cancer decide to have their risk-reducing surgery at age 36, they, whatever reasons, and certainly hormone replacement therapy could be started. And if the uterus removed, you only require estrogen alone and not progestin. Progestin is usually given if you have to protect the uterus. And with regard to past history of endometrial cancer, there's no good data saying that it causes the cancer to come back, but some of these tumors are hormonally responsive, and so there needs to be a good reason to start a discussion with your oncologist whether you should be on hormones if you have endometrial cancer. But there's no real strong data saying that there's, as in breast cancer, that you cannot be on.
Any further questions? We have time for one or two more. Right down here in front. And one more for you, Kara, afterwards. Yes?
I'm wondering if there's anything in the research to suggest if someone has Lynch syndrome and they've had one or more Lynch cancers, if they are in fact at a higher risk to contract other cancers in the Lynch family cancers.
So that's a really interesting scientific question. Is with no good specific answer for you. So the answer is that we definitely, we all have like 30,000 genes, and the mismatch repair genes don't act alone. So they're going to be modified by all the other genes and all the other variations that you have in your genome. And as well, obviously, we all have our individual environments in terms of what our eating habits are, our exercise habits, whether we, live next to a waste disposal plant, things like that. And we definitely see individuals that seem to have, many more cancers, and then other people who don't develop cancer at all despite the predisposition, and presumably it is due to either gene or gene-environment interaction, at least in part. But other than that theoretical knowledge, we are unaware of any specific reasons why those things happen.
Yes.
My name is Bob Frankfurt. I'm a retired physician. My family has been touched by Lynch syndrome. I wonder if someone should know this, but is there a possibility of newborn genetic testing? If there is, what would be done about taking advantage of that?
Sorry, did you say prenatal testing? Prenatal. Neonatal. I don't think there's any recommendation about testing children of any age. I guess the question is whether, selection and prenatal diagnosis, but I think for non-lethal genetic events, it's not done.
I guess one of the questions that occurred that thought forward is, what would you do actually if you were able to test? I mean, it's not going to prevent you from having a child, and we know that these things manifest themselves later on, so I don't know that there's any real benefit in having that tested at that particular time. Well, I think we'll call it right now, but the speakers I know few remarks to make. The speakers will be here for another few minutes, so if you have any burning questions, you can come down to the front. I do want to remind you that we have distributed survey forms, and we really do welcome your feedback. As mentioned, we like to partner with their audience in many ways, some of which I'll just tell you about in a second. Your feedback is important to us. It may help us plan future education nights, so please fill these surveys out and leave them at the back. If you'd like to join the registry, we have contact sheets in the foyer that you can complete, and one of our genetic counselors here will contact you. Importantly, we are videoing this session, and it will be on our website, stconcenter.ca. If you'd like to see any part of this, then please go to the website. If you have any comments for us, if you want to get involved, then please go to our website as well. I want to thank Joe Aiello and McLaughlin again for sponsoring this night. We do rely, a lot of what we do is a partnership with people like yourselves in the audience. So if you want to talk more about our research, if you want to support the research that's being done here, then please contact us through the website, and we will be more than happy to chat with you. So thank you very much for coming. We do appreciate all the questions, particularly the speakers. I thought were excellent tonight, and have a good evening.